The police officer slammed Miriam against the hood of the cruiser with enough force to knock the wind out of her lungs. Her face pressed against the cold metal, the grit of the Los Angeles asphalt biting into her cheek like tiny jagged teeth. The heat of the engine radiated through the hood, burning her skin, a stark contrast to the ice-cold fear gripping her heart. In the back seat, behind the reinforced glass that separated the criminals from the free, her 7-year-old daughter, Kira, was screaming. It was a silent scream to Miriam's ears, muffled by the heavy doors and the roar of blood in her own head, but it tore through her soul louder than any siren. She could see Kira's small brown hands beating futilely against the glass, her face contorted in a terror no child should ever know. Kira was mouthing the word "Mama" over and over again, her tears leaving streaks on the window. Miriam's world wasn't just ending, it was dissolving. It was a simple equation, really one she had been trying to solve her whole life, and the math was cruel. She was poor. She was black. She was a single mother in a neighborhood the city forgot, where the streetlights flickered like dying pulses and the police sirens were the lullabies. And she was up against a system designed to crush people like her, a machine fed by money, influence, and lies. She had no money for a lawyer, no powerful friends to call, no voice that anyone would listen to. She was just another statistic in a city of millions. "Stop resisting," the officer shouted, twisting her arm behind her back until the shoulder joint popped painfully. He was young, terrified, and acting on bad information which made him dangerous. "I'm not resisting," she sobbed, the words choked out against the hood, tasting of dust and despair. "Please, she's my baby. You can't take her. He's lying. Silas is lying. Save it for the judge," the officer spat, pressing his knee into her lower back. But then the street went silent. It wasn't a natural silence. It wasn't the quiet of the night or the pause between breaths. It was the kind of hush that falls over a jungle when a predator enters the clearing, a primal, instinctive recognition of a higher power. The birds stopped singing. The wind seemed to hold its breath. Even the officer froze, his hand hovering over his cuffs, his eyes widening as he looked down the street. 5 black SUVs, sleek and armored like tanks, rolled around the corner in a perfect phalanx. They didn't look like civilian vehicles. They looked like war machines dipped in obsidian. They moved with a synchronized menace, their engines purring with a low, predatory rumble that vibrated in Miriam's chest. They didn't slow down for the stop sign. They didn't signal. They simply took the street. They swerved, blocking the police convoy, boxing them in against the curb with surgical precision. Tires screeched, but the SUVs stopped in perfect unison. The officers released Miriam, stepping back, their hands drifting nervously to their holsters. Panic flickered in their eyes. This wasn't gangbangers and lowriders. This was military-grade intimidation. This was money. This was power. "Back up," one officer shouted, his voice cracking. "Identify yourselves. This is a police operation." But the men stepping out of the SUVs didn't listen to police officers. They wore earpieces and suits that cost more than the officers made in a year. They moved with fluid, lethal grace, forming a perimeter. They didn't draw weapons, they were weapons. And then the rear door of the lead vehicle opened. A polished black leather shoe stepped onto the cracked asphalt. Then another. The man who stepped out wasn't just a rich man. He was the king of the Los Angeles underworld. He wore a charcoal suit tailored to within a millimeter of perfection, and his presence hit the street like a shockwave. He adjusted his cufflinks, his face a mask of bored indifference that barely concealed the nuclear rage burning behind his eyes. He was Choi Jin-hyuk. He walked past the stunned officers as if they were traffic cones. He walked straight to Miriam, who was slumped against the cruiser, gasping for air. He wasn't here to negotiate. He wasn't here to bribe. He was here because they had touched the woman he loved, and for that sin, he was prepared to burn the entire precinct to the ground. But to understand why a ruthless Korean mafia lord would risk his empire, his life, and his legacy for an invisible cleaning lady, we have to go back. Back to the beginning. To a quiet Thursday afternoon, a schedule that was never meant to be broken, and a cheap bandage that changed the fate of a city. This story is long. It is brutal. And it is beautiful. We are racing to 2,000 subscribers before the year ends to build a community that believes in protection, justice, and love against all odds. If you want to see the good guys win and the bad guys get exactly what they deserve, help us reach our goal. Subscribe now. Now, let's enter the penthouse. In the heart of Century City, rising 50 floors above the smog and the noise of Los Angeles, there is a penthouse that defies description. It is a masterpiece of modern architecture. All glass, steel, and black marble. It offers a 360-degree view of the sprawling city, from the Hollywood Hills to the glittering ocean. But it doesn't feel like a home. Feels like a fortress, or maybe a tomb. This is the domain of Choi Jin-hyuk. At 32, Jin-hyuk is the silent king of the West Coast underworld. To the public, he is a venture capitalist, a real estate mogul with a diversified portfolio. But in the shadows, he owns half of Koreatown's real estate, controls the shipping lanes in Long Beach, and holds the debts of some of the city's most powerful politicians. He is a ghost story whispered in back alleys and boardrooms alike. They say he never raises his voice. They say he never leaves a fingerprint. They say he demands absolute perfection because his life depends on it. Not a speck of dust. Not a sound. And certainly no witnesses. For 6 months, Miriam Albertina has been a ghost in this machine. Miriam is 28. But her eyes carry the weight of 100 years. She learned the art of invisibility a long time ago. Growing up in a system that saw her as a statistic rather than a person, she learned that being seen often meant being targeted. So she perfected the art of disappearing. She folds herself smaller in elevators to make room for men in suits who don't even look at her. She quiets her breathing around important people. She wears her uniform like armor, a generic gray tunic and trousers that render her genderless, classless, and faceless to the wealthy people she serves. She is present but never seen. That is exactly why Jin-hyuk hired her agency, Elite Home Services. He pays double the standard rate for what he calls absolute invisibility. Miriam's routine is a military operation. She arrives at the service entrance at 1 p.m. She passes through a security check that rivals the TSA metal detectors, bag searches, ID verification. She takes the service elevator, never the main one, to the 50th floor. She has exactly 3 hours to clean 4,000 square feet of perfection. She knows the rules by heart, printed on a laminated card she keeps in her pocket. Do not touch the paperwork on the desk. Do not enter the master bedroom if the red light is on. Leave before 4 p.m. Never, under any circumstances, speak to Mr. Choi. For 6 months she has followed these rules religiously. She knows intimate details about him, though they have never met. She knows he drinks expensive scotch, but only 1 glass and only on bad days. She knows he reads philosophy in 3 languages, Korean, English, and French. She knows he has nightmares, judging by the twisted sheets she changes once a week, soaked in cold sweat. But to him, she is just a self-cleaning mechanism for his apartment, a Roomba with a heartbeat. Until today, Thursday, 2 p.m., Miriam was dusting the expansive bookshelf in the living room. It was a towering structure filled with leather-bound volumes. She had a secret ritual here. Jin-hyuk organized his books by author, which resulted in a chaotic visual mess of sizes and colors. Miriam, possessing an artist's soul that she couldn't afford to feed, would secretly reorganize small sections by color, creating a soothing gradient. It was her tiny rebellion, her mark on the world. She was humming a low, soulful tune her grandmother used to sing in Louisiana, a melody that smelled of rain and magnolias. Summertime and the livin' is easy. The sound of the elevator chime cut through her song like a guillotine. Ding! Miriam froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs. The digital clock on the wall read 2:03 p.m. He was never home. The schedule was sacred. If he found her here, if she disturbed him, she could lose this contract. And if she lost this contract, she lost the rent. If she lost the rent, she lost the apartment. If she lost the apartment, she lost Kira. The panic spiral hit her in a split second. The heavy steel doors of the private elevator slid open. Choi Jin-hyuk stepped out. Before he stepped into that elevator, Jin-hyuk had just come from a meeting in the basement of a seafood warehouse in San Pedro. The meeting had been with a Russian arms dealer who had tried to shortchange him on a shipment. The dealer, a man twice Jin-hyuk's size named Boris, had laughed when Jin-hyuk politely asked for the missing crate. "You are a little boy in a big suit," Boris had sneered. Go back to your calculators. Jin Hyuk hadn't laughed. He hadn't shouted. He had simply signaled Min-suk. Within 30 seconds, Boris was on his knees, and the missing crate was found. Jin Hyuk hadn't touched the man. He just stared at him until Boris broke. The difference between a thug and a king, Jin Hyuk had whispered to the trembling Russian, is that the thug uses violence to get what he wants. The king uses the promise of violence. But the encounter had drained him. It was a reminder of the filth he lived in, the constant posturing, the constant threat of death. He needed silence. He needed his fortress. He brought the storm with him into the penthouse. He was wearing a charcoal-tailored suit that fit his broad shoulders like a second skin. His tie was loosened, the top button of his white shirt undone, a sign of extreme stress. He was on the phone, a sleek black device pressed to his ear. He was speaking Korean, his voice a low, terrifying rumble. Miriam didn't speak the language, but she understood the tone. It was the tone of a man ordering the end of someone's life. It was cold, precise, and final. He walked right past her. He didn't even turn his head. He headed straight for the crystal decanter of whiskey on the wet bar. To him, she was less than a person. She was just part of the furniture. Just the help. Miriam held her breath, praying to the god of invisible women that he would grab his drink and go to his office. Please just keep walking. Just keep walking. But then, as he slammed the glass down on the marble counter, the sound echoed like a gunshot in the silent room. And Miriam flinched. It was a small movement, a reflex, a trauma response ingrained in her muscles. Her shoulders jerked up, her head ducked, and she took a sharp, jagged breath. Jin Hyuk paused. The whiskey glass hovered halfway to his mouth. He hung up the phone. He didn't say goodbye. He just tapped the screen and ended the call. The silence that rushed back into the room was heavier than before. It was suffocating. He turned slowly. Miriam was facing the bookshelf, her back to him. She was trembling. Turn around, he said. His voice was deep, resonant, and utterly devoid of warmth. It wasn't a request. Kings don't make requests. Miriam gripped the feather duster so hard her knuckles turned white. She slowly pivoted on her heel, keeping her head low, her chin tucked into her chest. She stared at the tips of his Italian leather shoes, polished to a mirror shine. I'm sorry, Mr. Choi, she whispered. I didn't mean to be here. I was just finishing. I'll leave immediately. I said, look at me. Miriam squeezed her eyes shut for a second, gathering every ounce of courage she possessed. Then she lifted her head. And there it was. The bandage. It was a scream in the silence of his perfect penthouse. A stark white cheap square of gauze taped clumsily over her left cheekbone. The adhesive was peeling at the corners. And peeking out from underneath the white pad was the angry, sickening purple-yellow of a fresh bruise. Jin Hyuk's expression didn't change. His face was a mask of stone. But his eyes shifted. The cold indifference vanished, replaced by a sudden, sharp focus. It was the look a tiger gives when it spots blood in the snow. He took a step forward. Miriam took a step back. She hit the bookshelf. A book, The Art of War, wobbled and fell to the floor with a loud thud. That reflexive retreat. That instinctual terror. It ignited something ancient inside Jin Hyuk. He had spent 10 years building a reputation as a monster so that no one would dare challenge him. He was used to fear. People feared him for what he could do to them. But this was different. This wasn't the fear of a subordinate. This was the fear of a victim. Who did this? He asked. His voice was deadly calm. The kind of calm that happens right before a tsunami hits the shore. Miriam's hand flew to her cheek, covering the bandage. Nobody, sir. I fell. I'm clumsy. I tripped on the stairs at my apartment building. You tripped, he repeated. He didn't believe her. Not for a second. Yes, sir. I'm sorry about the book. I'll pick it up, Anne. Jin Hyuk closed the distance between them in 3 long strides. He moved with a predator's grace, silent and swift. Suddenly, he was standing inside her personal space. He smelled of bergamot, expensive tobacco, and danger. He reached out his hand. Miriam flinched so violently she nearly dropped to her knees. She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the backhand, waiting for the pain she had learned to expect from men who smelled like power. But the blow didn't come. Instead, she felt a sensation that was shocking in its gentleness. Cool, callous fingertips brushed against her jawline, just below the tape. "Open your eyes, Miriam," she gasped. He knew her name. In 6 months he had never spoken to her, never acknowledged her. But he knew her name. She blinked her eyes open. He was staring at her, his dark eyes searching her face, cataloging the damage. "You didn't fall," he said softly. "A fall doesn't leave fingerprint bruises on a wrist." He glanced down. Miriam looked. In her haste to cover her face, her sleeve had ridden up. 3 dark, oval-shaped bruises marred the skin of her forearm. The mark of a grip. The mark of someone holding her down. "Tell me his name," Jin Hyuk commanded. "I can't," she whispered. "Please, Mr. Choi. I just need this job. If I cause trouble, the agency will fire me. Please. You think I'd fire you for being attacked?" He looked genuinely offended. "Sit. Sir. Sit." On the sofa. Miriam looked at the white silk sofa. It was pristine. "I can't. My uniform is. I've been cleaning dust. That sofa costs more than my life. It's furniture, Miriam. You are a human being. Sit down." He didn't wait for her to comply. He took her uninjured hand and guided her to the couch, pressing her down gently. Then he walked to the bathroom. He returned a moment later with a first aid kit. Not a plastic box from a drugstore, but a professional-grade medical case. He sat on the marble coffee table in front of her, disregarding the crease it would put in his trousers. He opened the kit and put on a pair of black nitrile gloves. "I'm going to change that bandage," he said. "That cheap tape is irritating your skin. You don't have to. Be quiet." He reached out and began to peel the tape away. He was incredibly focused, his movements precise and careful. He treated her face like it was a rare artifact he was afraid of breaking. As the bandage came off, the full extent of the injury was revealed. A nasty laceration across her cheekbone, surrounded by swelling. Jin Hyuk's jaw muscle jumped. He took an antiseptic wipe and began to clean the wound. "Does he live with you?" he asked. "No," Miriam said, her voice trembling. "It's my ex Kira's father." Jin Hyuk paused. "Kira? Your daughter?" Miriam froze. "How do you know my daughter's name?" Jin Hyuk finished cleaning the cut and applied a butterfly closure. He looked up, locking eyes with her. "I know you have a 7-year-old daughter named Kira. I know she likes dinosaurs and the color purple. I know she goes to McKinley Elementary. I know you work 4 jobs, this one the night shift at the diner and weekend catering, to pay for an apartment in a neighborhood you are terrified to walk through at night." Miriam stared at him, horror dawning. You investigated me?" "I investigate everyone who enters my home, Miriam. My enemies are everywhere. I need to know who is breathing my air." He applied a new high-quality bandage, smoothing the edges down with his thumb. "But I remember you," he continued, his voice softening. "I noticed the flowers, Miriam. Those cheap bodega flowers you buy with your own money and arrange in my kitchen. You think I don't see them? You reorganize my books by color because the chaos bothers you. You leave the window cracked exactly 2 inches because you figured out I like the fresh air but hate the wind." He stripped off the gloves. "You aren't invisible. You are the only real thing in this entire penthouse." Miriam's breath hitched. For 6 months she had felt like a ghost. But the king of the underworld had been watching her the whole time. "Give me his name," he said again. "Silas," she whispered. "His name is Silas." "Silas." Jin Hyuk tested the name on his tongue like a curse. "And why did Silas do this?" He came by yesterday. He wanted money. He knows I get paid on Thursdays. I told him I needed it for rent. He didn't like that answer. He hit you for money. He thinks I owe him. For existing, I guess." Jin Hyuk stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the city. "He will never touch you again." "You can't do anything," Miriam said, standing up. "He's crazy. He's persistent. If you get involved, it will just make it worse." Jin Hyuk turned. A dark, terrifying smile played on his lips. "Miriam, you are worried about a street dog. I am the wolf. Men who hurt women for money. They are handled differently in my world. He pressed a button on the wall panel. My driver June is downstairs. He will take you home. I have to finish cleaning. I have the bathroom left too. The bathroom can wait. You are going home. You are taking the rest of the week off. You will be paid your full rate. Mr. Choi, I can't take your car. It's too much. It is not a request. He walked over to her. He was so tall, he towered over her. But he angled his body so he wouldn't be intimidating. Let me do this. Please. For my own peace of mind. Miriam looked at him. She saw the iron will in his eyes, but she also saw something else. Desperation? Loneliness? She nodded. While Miriam was being driven home in a Maybach, Jin Hyuk did not go back to work. He went to the basement. He dialed a number on his secure line. Min-suk. Yes, boss. His second-in-command answered immediately. Find me everything on a man named Silas. Associated with Miriam Albertina. I want his address, his hangouts, his debts, and his vices. I want it in an hour. Understood. Is there a problem? There is a pest. We need to fumigate. Jin Hyuk hung up. He poured himself that drink now. He stared at the spot on the sofa where Miriam had sat. He could still smell her. A faint scent of vanilla and hard work. He touched his own chest. His heart was beating fast. For 10 years he had felt nothing. He had buried his emotions along with his enemies. But seeing that bruise on her face, it had woken something up. He wasn't just angry. He was offended. It was as if someone had walked into the Louvre and slashed a painting. Miriam was art to him. Quiet, resilient, beautiful art. And someone had dared to damage her. His phone buzzed. File. Silas Williams. 32 petty theft. Assault. Gambling debts. Jin Hyuk scrolled. He saw the mugshot. A smug mean face. Street dog, Jin Hyuk whispered. He forwarded the file to his security team with a simple instruction. Watch him. Do not engage yet. Just watch. He wanted to kill Silas. He could have it done by dinner. But he knew Miriam. She was proud. She was scared. If he moved too fast, he would spook her. He had to be surgical. The ride in the Maybach was silent, smooth and surreal. The seats were made of leather softer than Miriam's skin. The windows were tinted so dark that the world outside looked like a movie. June, the driver, was a mountain of a man with a shaved head and a neck tattoo of a dragon. He didn't speak, but when they arrived at her crumbling apartment complex, he got out and opened her door. He walked her all the way to her unit. Mr. Choi instructed me to wait until I hear the deadbolt lock, June rumbled. His voice was surprisingly deep. Thank you, June, Miriam said, fumbling with her keys. She got inside, locked the door and leaned against it, exhaling a breath she felt like she'd been holding for hours. Mama! Kira came running from the small bedroom. She was wearing mismatched socks and a t-shirt with a T-Rex on it. You're early. Did you get fired? Miriam laughed, a broken watery sound. She dropped to her knees and hugged her daughter, burying her face in Kira's curly hair. No, baby. I didn't get fired. My boss. He gave me a ride. The rich ghost man? Kira asked, eyes wide. Yeah, the rich ghost man. Miriam touched the bandage on her face. Felt different now. Less like a mark of shame and more like a shield. But peace is fragile in Miriam's world. Later that evening, after tucking Kira into bed, Miriam realized they were out of milk. She grabbed her purse and ran down to the corner grocery store. It was only a block away, but at 9 p.m., that block felt like a mile of enemy territory. She was in the dairy aisle, reaching for a carton, when the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She felt eyes on her. She turned slowly. At the end of the aisle, standing next to the display of stale chips, was a shadow. Silas. He wasn't approaching. He was just leaning there, wearing a dirty hoodie, a toothpick rolling around his mouth. He grinned when he saw her look. A predator's grin. He tapped his wrist, right where the bruises were on her arm. Then he tapped his cheek. I marked you. He didn't say a word. He just winked, turned and walked out of the store. Miriam stood frozen, the carton of milk sweating in her hand. He wasn't gone. He was hunting. He was letting her know that no matter where she went, he was watching. She ran all the way home, locking all 3 locks, and pushed a chair under the doorknob. She didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window with a kitchen knife, watching the street. The next morning the terror continued. Miriam walked Kira to McKinley Elementary. She hugged her extra tight at the gates. "Be good, baby." T-Rex hugs. T-Rex hugs. Kira giggled, squeezing back. But at recess, Kira sat alone on the bench. Her clothes were clean but old. Her shoes were worn. 2 boys approached her. "Hey, dinosaur girl," one sneered. "Why do you always wear that same shirt? Are you poor?" Kira shrank back. "Leave me alone. My dad says people like you ruin the neighborhood." The boy laughed, kicking dirt onto her shoes. Kira started to cry. Suddenly, a shadow fell over the boys. It wasn't a teacher. It was a man in a black suit. June. He didn't touch the boys. He just stood there, arms crossed, the dragon tattoo on his neck visible. He looked like a mountain that had decided to walk. The boys looked up, terrified. "Is there a problem here?" June asked. His voice was low, like rocks grinding together. "And no, sir," the bully stammered. "Good. Because this young lady," June pointed a massive finger at Kira, "is under my protection. And my boss doesn't like it when his friends get dirt on their shoes." The boys ran. Kira looked up at June, eyes wide. "Are you a dragon?" June cracked a rare, small smile. "Something like that, little one. Mr. Choi sent me to watch over you." Kira beamed. She had a dragon. That afternoon, Miriam's phone buzzed. She jumped, nearly dropping her coffee. It wasn't her agency. It was an unknown number. Text message: "Dinner. Tonight. 7 p.m. I will pick you up. Bring Kira." Miriam stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered over the keypad. "Miriam, I can't. I am your maid. It is inappropriate. And I have nothing to wear." 3 seconds later, her phone rang. "It is not inappropriate if I invite you." Jin Hyuk's voice came through the line, rich and commanding. "Mr. Choi." "Jin Hyuk. Please." "Jin Hyuk." She tested the name. Felt dangerous to say. "We are from different worlds. You wear suits that cost more than my rent. I buy milk with coupons. This doesn't work. I am not interested in your coupons, Miriam. I am interested in you. I want to meet the daughter who is the center of your universe. I want to know the woman, not the invisible worker." "Why?" "Because," he paused, his voice dropping an octave, "because yesterday when I saw you hurt, I realized I have been looking at you for 6 months, but I haven't been seeing you. Let me fix that. One dinner. If you hate it, I will never ask again." Miriam looked at Kira, who was happily telling her about the dragon man at school. She thought about Silas in the grocery store aisle. She thought about the way Jin Hyuk had touched her face. "Okay," she whispered. "But I really don't have anything fancy to wear. Wear whatever makes you feel beautiful. See you at 7. At 7 p.m. sharp, the black SUV pulled up to the curb. It looked like a spaceship landed in the middle of a junkyard. The neighbors were peeling back their curtains, staring. Jin Hyuk stepped out. He wasn't wearing a tie today. He wore a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that were surprisingly muscular. He held a small bouquet of purple flowers. Not expensive roses, but wildflowers. Miriam opened the door. She was wearing her Sunday best, a simple yellow sundress she had owned for 5 years. She had tried to iron out the wrinkles, but the fabric was tired. Jin Hyuk looked at her, and his eyes softened. "You look radiant." He crouched down, ignoring the dust on the porch, and held the flowers out to Kira, who was hiding behind Miriam's leg. "Annyeonghaseyo, Kira," he said. "I heard you like dinosaurs." Kira peeked out. "Do you have a T-Rex?" "I don't," Jin Hyuk admitted solemnly. "But I have a dragon tattoo. Is that acceptable?" Kira's eyes went wide. "Can I see it?" "Kira." Miriam gasped. Jin Hyuk laughed. It was a rich, deep sound that transformed his face from a stone mask into something devastatingly handsome. He rolled up his left sleeve a little further, revealing the tail of a dragon inked in intricate detail on his forearm. "Cool," Kira breathed. "Ready to go?" he asked, standing up and offering Miriam his arm. The restaurant Hanul was an institution in Koreatown. It was a place where politicians made deals and families celebrated milestones. When Jin Hyuk walked in, the entire restaurant went silent. The host bowed so low his nose almost touched the floor. They were led to a private room in the back, separated by rice paper screens. The dinner was a revelation. Miriam expected him to be flashy, to order the most expensive champagne and talk about his money. But Jin Hyuk was attentive. He poured tea for her. He cut Kira's galbi, short ribs, into bite-sized pieces. He spent 20 minutes teaching Kira how to use metal chopsticks. Think of your fingers like a claw, he explained patiently. The bottom stick stays still like the earth. The top stick moves like the wind. Kira frowned, concentrating hard, and finally managed to pick up a piece of radish. I did it. Genius, Jin Hyuk declared. You are a natural. Miriam watched them, her heart aching. Silas had never shown this kind of patience. Silas barely looked at Kira. So, Jin Hyuk said, turning his attention to Miriam, tell me about Louisiana. Tell me about the grandmother who taught you those songs. And she did. For the first time in years, Miriam talked about herself. Not as a mother, not as an employee, but as Miriam. She talked about the smell of rain on the bayou, about her dream of designing interiors, about how she lost her scholarship when her mom got sick. Jin Hyuk listened. He didn't check his phone. He didn't interrupt. He just drank her in. But the real world has a way of crashing parties. Halfway through the meal, the screen door slid open. A man stood there. He was Korean, older, wearing a suit that was too loud, with a jagged scar running down his neck. He was flanked by two thugs. Choi Jin Hyuk. The man sneered in Korean. Eating with the help? Have you lost your pride? Miriam froze. She grabbed Kira's hand under the table. She recognized the tone of violence. Jin Hyuk didn't stand. He didn't shout. He slowly set down his chopsticks. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the sudden silence. He picked up his napkin and wiped his mouth. Then he looked up at the intruder. His eyes were void of humanity. They were black holes. Get out, Jin Hyuk said in English. Softly. Or what? The man laughed. You going to throw a dumpling at me? Jin Hyuk picked up a steak knife from the table. He didn't hold it like a weapon. He flipped it casually between his fingers. Park, Jin Hyuk said, addressing the man. You have exactly 3 seconds to leave before I buy your debt from the triads and foreclose on your mother's house. 1. The man's face went pale. 2. The man bowed, terrified, and backed out of the room, dragging his thugs with him. The screen door slid shut. Jin Hyuk put the knife down. He took a deep breath, and when he looked back at Miriam, the monster was gone. But Miriam had seen it. I'm sorry, he said. Business. That wasn't business, Miriam whispered. That was a threat. It was protection, he corrected. There is a difference. Is there? In my world, yes. 2 weeks passed. The relationship, if that's what it was, fell into a strange rhythm. Jin Hyuk would text her. He would send June to pick them up for ice cream. He was courting her slowly, respectfully. But Miriam held back. She had seen the knife. She had seen the power. She knew that getting close to a sun that bright meant you eventually got burned. Then the call came. It was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. The hospital in Louisiana. Miriam's grandmother, Nana Rose, had suffered a heart attack. She needed immediate surgery. A bypass that the insurance wouldn't cover fully. They needed a $40,000 deposit to operate. Miriam sat on her kitchen floor weeping. She had $400 in her savings. She called everyone she knew. No one had that kind of money. Desperate, she called Silas. Maybe he had a stash. Maybe he would help for Kira's sake. Silas laughed at her. You want money? Ask your rich boyfriend. Oh wait, he probably dumped you already. He hung up. At 3 a.m. her phone rang. It was Jin Hyuk. Why are you awake? He asked immediately. I saw your light on from the street. You're outside. I was passing by. Tell me what is wrong. Miriam broke down. She told him everything. She told him about Nana Rose, about the money, about the hopelessness. Hang up, he said. What? Hang up the phone, Miriam. He hung up. Miriam stared at the phone, feeling abandoned. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Her phone rang again. It was the hospital administrator. Miss Albertina? We have good news. An anonymous donor just wired the full amount for the surgery. Plus post-op care. We are prepping Nana Rose now. Miriam dropped the phone. She ran to the window. Down on the street, under the flickering streetlight, the black Maybach was still there. She ran down the stairs barefoot in her pajamas. She burst out onto the sidewalk. Jin Hyuk stepped out of the car. You, she sobbed, hitting his chest with her fists. You crazy arrogant man. He caught her wrists. Is she okay? You paid it. You paid all of it. Money is just paper, Miriam. Family is blood. Go upstairs. Pack a bag. June will drive you to the airport. I have a jet waiting at Van Nuys. You are going to Louisiana. I can't accept this. You aren't accepting it. You are borrowing it. You can pay me back in dustings. For the next 50 years. He smiled. And in that moment, under the streetlight, Miriam stopped seeing a mafia boss. She just saw a man who would burn the world to keep her warm. She kissed him. It was desperate and salty with tears. He stiffened in surprise, then wrapped his arms around her, lifting her off the pavement, kissing her back with a hunger that shook her to her core. The trip to Louisiana was a blur of private jets and humid air. Jin Hyuk came with her. For 3 days he sat in the hospital waiting room. He didn't complain. He worked on his laptop. He brought coffee for Miriam's aunts. He charmed the nurses. When Nana Rose finally woke up, she looked at the tall, impeccably dressed Korean man standing by her bed. Who is this? She rasped. This is Jin Hyuk, Nana, Miriam said. He's my friend. Nana Rose narrowed her eyes. He looks like trouble. Jin Hyuk stepped forward and took her frail hand. I am trouble, ma'am. But I am the good kind. Nana Rose laughed. We'll see. That night, on the porch of her grandmother's small house, Miriam and Jin Hyuk sat listening to the crickets. You fit in everywhere, Miriam marveled. Penthouse, hospital, Louisiana porch. I adapt, Jin Hyuk said. It is how I survive. Why me, Jin Hyuk? You could have anyone. He looked at her. In my world, everyone wears a mask. Everyone wants something. You are the only person who looked at me and didn't see a wallet or a weapon. You saw a man. And when I look at you, I see home. He kissed her again, slower this time. Under the Louisiana stars, they made a promise without words. While Miriam was in Louisiana, Jin Hyuk went to war. He sat in his office, the lights dimmed. Across from him sat Min-suk, his second in command. Park knew where I was having dinner, Jin Hyuk said quietly. He knew about the girl. No one knew about the girl except you and June. Min-suk shifted in his chair. Boss, maybe you were followed. I am never followed, Jin Hyuk said. Someone told him. Someone is selling my schedule to the West Side gang. Jin Hyuk stood up and poured 2 glasses of scotch. He placed one in front of Min-suk. I trust you, Min-suk. You have been with me since the beginning. Find me the mole. Min-suk drank the scotch. His hand trembled slightly. Jin Hyuk saw it. He didn't say anything. He just watched. Later that night, Jin Hyuk checked the security logs. Min-suk had accessed the personnel files 3 times in the last week. Specifically Miriam's file. Jin Hyuk felt a cold stone settle in his stomach. The betrayal wasn't coming from outside. It was sitting at his right hand. He didn't act yet. He needed proof. He needed to know why. And he needed to make sure that when he struck, he didn't miss. When Miriam returned from Louisiana, Nana Rose was recovering beautifully. Things were different. They were a couple. It was secret, it was dangerous, but it was real. For Kira's 8th birthday, she begged to go to the Santa Monica Pier. She wanted to ride the Ferris wheel. Jin Hyuk agreed. He rented out the entire VIP car. They were walking down the pier, Kira eating cotton candy, Jin Hyuk wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses to blend in. He looked like a normal dad. But Miriam noticed something. He was tense. His head was constantly swiveling. His hand hovered near his waist. What is it? She whispered. Nothing. Just crowded. They got on the Ferris wheel. As the car reached the very top, stopping to overlook the ocean, it happened. Thwip. A small hole appeared in the glass of their gondola. Right next to Jin Hyuk's head. A spiderweb of cracks bloomed. Jin Hyuk moved faster than thought. He threw himself over Miriam and Kira, forcing them to the floor of the car. "Stay down," he hissed. "What was that?" Miriam screamed. "Silencer. Long range." From the parking garage. He pulled a phone from his pocket. "Code red. Here. Sector 4. Take him out. Now." Miriam hugged Kira, shielding her body. She watched Jin-hyuk. He wasn't scared. He was calculating. He was coordinating a counterstrike while trapped in a glass box 100 feet in the air. 5 minutes later, the wheel started moving again. His phone buzzed. "Target neutralized," he said to the phone. He helped them up. "We are leaving. Smile. Walk normally. Do not let Kira know." They walked off the pier. Kira was oblivious, high on sugar. "That was awesome. We were so high up." Miriam walked beside Jin-hyuk, her legs shaking. "Someone tried to kill you." "Yes. While you were with us." "They made a mistake," Jin-hyuk said, his voice ice cold. "They targeted me when I was alone. Now they endangered you. Tonight, the West Side gang ceases to exist." Miriam stopped. "This is your life, Jin-hyuk. Bullets. Snipers. Death. I protect you. You are the danger. How long until they don't miss? How long until they aim for Kira to get to you?" Jin-hyuk didn't answer. Because he knew she was right. The breaking point came 3 days later. Miriam and Kira were at the apartment. Jin-hyuk had placed guards outside unseen. But the enemy didn't come from the outside. It was Silas. He didn't break the door down. He used a key. A key he had stolen from Miriam's purse weeks ago. He walked in at 2 a.m. He was drunk, high, and holding a baseball bat. "You think you're special?" Silas slurred, waving the bat. "Think you can date a chink gangster and forget where you came from?" Miriam backed away, pushing Kira into the closet. "Get out, Silas. The police are coming." "The police?" Silas laughed. "I called the police. I told them you're selling drugs. I told them you're unfit. But first, I'm gonna teach you a lesson." He swung the bat. It smashed the lamp. Suddenly, the front door exploded inward. It wasn't the police. It was Jin-hyuk. He didn't have guards. He was alone. He had been parked outside watching when he saw Silas enter. Jin-hyuk didn't say a word. He caught the next swing of the bat with his bare forearm. The bone in his arm cracked, but he didn't flinch. He ripped the bat from Silas's hands. He grabbed Silas by the throat and slammed him into the wall so hard the plaster cracked. "I told you," Jin-hyuk whispered, his face inches from Silas's. "I told you if you touched her again I would take the arm." He threw Silas to the ground. He placed his boot on Silas's left elbow. "Jin-hyuk, don't." Miriam screamed. "Kira is watching." Jin-hyuk froze. He looked at the closet door, which was cracked open. Terrified I was peeking out. He looked down at Silas. He stepped back. "Get out," Jin-hyuk snarled. "If I see you again I won't be a man. I will be a monster." Silas scrambled up, clutching his arm, and ran. But as he ran he yelled back. "It's over. CPS is coming. I told them everything. The sniper at the pier. The gang ties. They're gonna take her." Jin-hyuk turned to Miriam. "How did he know about the pier?" Miriam shook her head. "I didn't tell him." Jin-hyuk's face went pale. "He didn't know. Someone told him. I have a leak. A mole. Minsuk." The next morning the nightmare began. The police arrived. But they weren't alone. Child Protective Services was with them. Silas had given them photos. Photos of Jin-hyuk entering the apartment. Photos of the sniper incident, leaked by the mole. He spun a story that Miriam was endangering the child by dating a known warlord. "Miriam Albertina," the officer said. "We have an emergency removal order." "No," Miriam screamed. She fought them. She clawed at the officers. "He's lying. He's the abuser. Ma'am, stop resisting." They handcuffed her on the lawn. The neighbors watched. Kira was screaming, "Mommy! Mommy!" as they dragged her to the social worker's car. Miriam lay on the grass, dirt in her mouth, watching the only thing that mattered in her world disappear. She was arrested for assaulting an officer. They threw her in a holding cell. She sat there for hours. Cold. Alone. Hopeless. She realized Jin Hyuk was right. His world had poisoned hers. She had lost everything. 2 hours later, the door to the holding cell opened. Miriam didn't look up. Leave me alone. Get up. It was Jin Hyuk. He was wearing a fresh suit, but his arm was in a sling from where the bat had hit him. He looked tired. He looked furious. Go away, Miriam hissed. This is your fault. They took her because of you. I know, he said. And I am going to get her back. How? By shooting the judge. No. By using the one weapon more powerful than a gun. He tossed a file on the bench. The truth. He helped her up. I found the mole. It was Minsuk. He was working with the West Side gang. He fed Silas the info to destroy me by destroying you. He is dealt with. And Silas. Silas is currently in custody. We found his drug stash. And we found the money the West Side gang paid him to file the CPS report. The police captain is reviewing the evidence now. Miriam stared at him. You did all that in 3 hours? I told you. I would burn the world for you. Come. We have a precinct to intimidate. They walked into the main precinct. It was chaotic. Jin Hyuk walked in the center, flanked by 5 high-priced lawyers. He slammed his good hand on the captain's desk. You have my fiancé's daughter, he announced. The room went quiet. Fiancé. Miriam looked at him. Mr. Choi, the captain said nervously. This is a police matter. No. This is a kidnapping facilitated by a false report from a known felon, orchestrated by a rival criminal syndicate to get to me. And you fell for it. One of the lawyers stepped forward. We have the bank transfers to Mr. Williams, Silas. We have the confession from the mole. And we have an injunction from the Supreme Court judge demanding the immediate return of the child. The captain looked at the paperwork. He looked at Jin Hyuk. He looked at the 5 lawyers who looked like sharks sensing blood. Release the girl, the captain sighed. A door opened. Kira ran out. Mama! Miriam fell to her knees, catching her daughter. They wept together on the dirty station floor. Jin Hyuk stood back, watching them. He looked like he wanted to join them, but he held back. He felt unworthy. Miriam looked up. She saw him turning to leave. Jin Hyuk. He stopped. Where are you going? I fixed it, he said softly. Now I leave. You were right. I am poison. You idiot, Miriam said, standing up and wiping her tears. She walked over to him. The entire police station was watching. The Mafia lord and the maid. She grabbed his lapels. You aren't poison. You're the antidote. You saved us. You saved my grandmother. You saved me. I am a monster, Miriam. Maybe, she smiled. But you're my monster. She pulled him down and kissed him. Right there in front of the cops, the lawyers, and the criminals. Walking away from the person you love because you think you're bad for them is the hardest thing a man can do. But fighting to be better for them? That is the bravest. If you've enjoyed this roller coaster, please hit that subscribe button. We are just a few hundred away from our goal. Join the family. 1 year later. The penthouse looks different. The black and gray austerity is gone. There are colorful throw pillows on the sofa. There are toys in the corner. There are flowers everywhere, vibrant. Expensive arrangements mixed with wildflowers. Miriam is no longer wearing a uniform. She is wearing a silk blouse. She runs her own interior design firm now, Invisible Touch, funded by a silent investor who happens to be her husband. Jin Hyuk is in the kitchen. He is wearing an apron over his dress shirt. He is cooking japchae. Miriam walks in and wraps her arms around his waist from behind. You're home early, she murmurs. I retired, he reminds her. I'm a consultant now. Legitimate business only. Mostly legitimate, she teases. 90%, he concedes. He turns around. He traces the spot on her cheek where the bandage used to be. There is no scar. Only glowing, happy skin. Do you regret it? He asks. The chaos? The fear. Regret loving you? She smiles. Never. You saw me when I was invisible, Jin Hyuk. Now, I see you. Kira runs into the room. Is dinner ready? T-Rex is hungry. T-Rex must wash hands first, Jin Hyuk commands. Kira groans but runs to the sink. Jin Hyuk kisses Miriam. A slow, deep kiss that promises forever. They say monsters don't get happy endings. But maybe Jin Hyuk wasn't the monster. Maybe the real monsters were the ones who looked at a bruised woman and looked away. Jin Hyuk didn't look away. And because of that, he found his home. Stories like Miriam's prove that love finds us in the darkest places. He saw the wound everyone else ignored. And she healed the heart everyone else feared. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, comment I believe below. And welcome to the family. See you in the next one.